Well, it's great to be with you, Sarah. This is Dr. Sarah Skidmore. She is the Director of Marketing Communications at our church. She is an amazing woman. I know if you've not met her, you need to do that. She is uber talented, has a doctorate in leadership. She's dedicated, faithful, likes the Buccaneer. Well, I should say she has a hat, Bruce Buccaneer up there. Both my Buccaneers go Bucks. She's a dog lover and loves the beach, which makes her like a kindred spirit in my world. So, Sarah, just so thankful for you and the work that you do at our church and helping us communicate and getting our brand out in the community for the sake of Christ. So, tell us, how long have you been at the church, and what are some of the main pieces of what you do as the director?
Yeah, so I have been at the church for 3 years in October, which is pretty crazy to think about. And I am involved in my role. I'm involved in everything from the website to social media to our emails, our daily devotionals, any strategic message that comes from the church. I'm involved in.
Well, that's a lot. That I'm thinking you're cat wrangling. You're herding the cats with several dozen ministries and getting us to get all our pieces together and putting them in a systemic and digestible way that helps us be effective and helps us be faithful in serving Christ and getting that message of the ministries out. So thank you for that work. That's a kind of unique ministry, right? And one that you don't run into every day in terms of a church and what you bring in terms of leadership. Why this ministry? What's appealing to you about what you do?
Well, I've always been passionate about marketing communications, and I definitely feel like it's an area that I'm gifted in. And so I really enjoy being able to help the church and getting our message across to our community so that we can reach more people.
Well, you do an amazing job, and I'm so grateful for what you bring, the input and the perspective you share at the highest levels of staff meetings, all the way down to helping to mentor and guide individual ministries and mentors others in leadership. You've just been a blessing to us, and so I'm just thankful for you. Thanks for being a part and sharing who you are. Now, I know you were in a lot of ways responsible for our town hall meeting and the way we put that together and the platform. Tell us a little bit about the town hall and what you experienced and what you saw.
Definitely. So this year's town hall was quite different than last year when we were all in the gym in person.
Yeah.
But this year we had folks submit questions beforehand, and that really shaped the messaging and the information that we shared during the town hall. And then afterwards, we had those who were registered fill out a survey and let us know what other questions that they still had, because the town hall likely provoked other questions as people
Right.
participated in it.
So I know that there were several questions, and so why don't you share with us one of those questions and what you saw?
Yeah, for sure. So let me share my screen here for a second. So the first question that we had in the follow-up survey was, do you have any additional questions regarding the church's reopening and focus? Because we covered a lot in the town hall, but we're sure that it sparked other questions and whatnot. So
Sure.
of those that responded to the survey, 36 responded to this specific question. The majority of responses had no other questions at this time, but we did get some additional questions. And so a lot of the additional questions were about the upcoming restructure and reorganization of some of our staff and ministry areas, and how the church family will be informed about what those decisions are and when they happen.
Right. Yeah, we have actually begun executing on that since the town hall meeting. We had a number of conversations yesterday in terms of the staffing. And that was kind of the culmination of a long process of a numbers of months that involved a large group of people, from the lay leaders on the leadership council, the umbrella board of the church, to the lay leaders on our staff parish committee, which is a team that oversees the hiring, firing, and employment, to our pillar leaders, to clergy, really talking about who we're called to be as a church in this context of the pandemic and this context of not knowing what is to come. I mean, boy, Lordy, this seems to be being drawn out, and and it feels clear as mud and jello right now, and who knows when that will end, and people are different. So we've been in this season where we're trying to lean into this church God has called us to be. And so we involved our top level laity leaders to be a part of that envisioning. What ministries have we had to put on pause? What ministries do we need to restructure? What ministries do we need to increase? Moving towards virtual worship has added an increase of resource towards those that do the IT and the cameras and all the rest. So those are some of the questions that they worked through what that might look like at the higher church level, culminating into some effect in staffing, which we told you about and have worked on yesterday. Now begins the work of what the restructuring looks like individually for individual ministries. And we need to have our leaders involved in that, and those that are in those ministries involved in that. Those that have, boots on the ground, so to speak, that are in there doing ministry. We want to have them in the conversation. And so if you are involved in a ministry, we want to hear from you and want you to be a part of what that dialogue looks like. In the meantime, we are going to be sending out an email tomorrow or Friday that tells you about some of the staffing changes. And then you'll be hearing from us. There's a letter that will be coming up from council down the road that talks about some of the different ministry restructuring. But we want to be the best church we can be, the one that's most faithful, and the one that really is leaning into God's call. We knew that the institutional church already was in a time and season of transition, that in the world we live in now, we have folks that have never been exposed to Methodism or church family. And so we've already been in that dialogue, and now we have the opportunity to lean into that even more. So you'll be hearing from us, and be hearing from us shortly, and then again. And if you're involved in the ministries, you'll be hearing from us to be a part of that restructure individually. So I think there's another question, Sarah. By the way, should we call you Sarah or Dr. Skidmore? We want to recognize your hard work doctorate there, but what would you prefer?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think Dr. Skidmore sounds a little bit intimidating, so we don't have to go with that one.
Don't pull that out. Only in emergencies, I see.
Yeah. But yeah, we do have
another question.
Yeah, a second question. And it was, would you like to serve on a lay team? And so about a third of the responses were, I'm already serving on one or many lay teams, which is awesome to hear. But about a third were interested in how they can serve during this time of isolation and virtual ministry and things of that nature.
I was reading about Nehemiah last night, when it's in kind of an incredible book in the Old Testament. Nehemiah was the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes of Persia, the superpower of the time, was one of those that was exiled, a group of exiles to Persia from Jerusalem. And in the book in the Old Testament, it's this book of 7 prayers that Nehemiah has as he helps folks rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, which was such a significant piece in their faith. At that point, God dwelled in the temple in Jerusalem, and so this is a definite calling to get back to living with God. And so a powerful story. And Nehemiah hears about Jerusalem lying in ruins, and he secures the resources, and he goes and he rallies the folks around this sacred task. And if you read the book of Nehemiah, it's really interesting because everyone takes up a different part of the wall, and they all get assigned different parts, and they start building together in their individual parts, and they're doing things that are outside what they normally would do. Like the priests are rebuilding the gates, and those working in the fish market are rebuilding a portion of the wall, and they're all contributing, and they're all dedicating themselves to protection of the whole, to be part of this movement that God is doing and calling to. And so it's just this powerful sense of the importance of everybody and the power of what happens when we come together and unify around a God dream for what he has in store for us on earth. And I think that's really some of what we're in right now. We're in this season of pandemic, and things are becoming new. God has a new dream. His mercies are new every morning, and he is calling us to be a part of this establish of life with God on earth, bring love and hope and joy to the world that needs it more than ever. And we have a ton of talented, dedicated, faithful people who have just blessed us and so many others through giving. And so I'd love to share just a couple of ways you can get involved. There's many ways, but there's a couple of ways that are just really tangible where you can take just a few minutes of your time and be a source of God's love, hope, and joy in this world. You can do that. And so I think we have a slide with a couple of different ways just off the top of the hat that you could look into. So, we have a dozen, 2 dozen different, actually over 2 dozen different ministries in the church, but a couple family ministry. Right now, we are really working to have resources for families with young children, and they just don't get a break. It's constant, and they need the resources. How do you worship at home when kids are running around and all? We want to help them. And so, if you have a passion or you're good with children, or you might have an idea about ways that you can help people teach their kids about God, that's a huge area. Video, so it's all on video. So if you have talent with video editing, or you have talent with mapping out storyboards or working a camera, that's a huge need. Virtual activities in terms of crafts or Bible stories, or just any ways that we can show children in this difficult time that they are loved and a precious child of God. What a tremendous gift that would be. We have a care ministry at the church. We've mentioned in the last couple of weeks, we've revamped the care ministry these last couple of months. All of the pastors are involved in it now. We also have expanded our lay team that's involved in it. And we go over that every week, and we need your help. We are calling people to check in on them, and that has been really interesting to see how we've had people come back to the church just because somebody called to check on them. We've also found out people that we haven't done so well in caring for, and really saying, hey, we want to care for you. And so if you're good on the phone, or you like to have conversation, you don't have to leave the house. You can just get a list from us and call and let us know what you found, and just be a voice of care for another. There's video check-ins. We send out letters and cards on anniversaries of the loss of a loved one, or a significant birthday, and maybe just a few minutes at your desk at home to write a card we all can sign on behalf of the church. Would be a wonderful way to participate and give the gift of love to another in the family. We also have a relief fund that we are collecting to have financial resources as this pandemic goes on. We have more and more families that are affected by financial crisis because of what's happened. And we want to be supportive and helpful in that time. You can participate out of the abundance that God has given you. Worship ministry is evolving. We have lots of questions of what that's going to look like. We know that virtual worship takes twice as much work as it does on site. And we've been working hard to be on site at the time of it so that you get the sense, and we get the sense we're going to get back to this. But we know virtual worship will be with us to stay as well. So some of us like worshiping in our pajamas on the couch way too much. So it's a great tool to have, and actually broadens our family into people that we haven't reached before. And so you can participate and be a part of a ministry that reaches people around the United States just by some time. And perhaps you have a gift of gab, and you're willing to be one of the chat moderators and just checking, hey, how you doing today? So good to see you. We have a way to set you up and do that and be part of the team that does that. We, again, are always looking for help with audio visual, and some of it is even setup of the stage and setup of the flowers, and make sure there's communion elements that are present. Just a number of different ways. If worship is your thing and you live into it, we can use your help. And just a few minutes a day would be a great blessing to others. Sarah has talked about the marketing and communication ministry. It has been vital for us as we're dispersed and isolated to keep this going. And so maybe you're really talented in graphic design. Maybe you're like my children, you can get around the computer. I'm still trying to fight with it, but there's some in our family that are uber talented in terms of electronics and IT and all of those things that we live on now. And just, an hour or two of your time would be a great blessing. Primary, if you're talking about ways of maybe collecting stories, or maybe you have a story to tell in terms of a ministry you've been serving in. Maybe you're really gifted at writing. These are just 12 or 15 different ways, and there's 3 times as many of this that you can participate. And I know that perhaps you have other talents that we haven't even mention, let us know. info@fumcwp.org. Don't wait for the engraved invitation. Let us know. One of the things I love about this church is that we have so many faithful and talented people. And God, of course, calls for us to be faithful over effective. That's one of the things I've been really trying to live into in this season as we're learning new ways of being church, to try to be faithful. That's what God calls us to be, and let God take that. And so if you're willing to be faithful and you want to get connected and you want to bless other people, reach out and say, hey, I'd love to be a part of that process. And we'd love to have you. I just invite you, as we end up this time with Dr. Sarah, that you would consider um, stepping out and serving and blessing other people. The world needs the love and the joy and the hope that we have now more than ever before. Dr. Sarah, thanks so much for being with us and for all the work you're doing to bless our family and putting this together and helping us connect after the town hall meeting. And at home, be looking for the email and for the communication to come about the restructuring. God bless.